All right, let's take a look at the Kansas City Chiefs and see what did they do during the 2018 off season, both in free agency and in the draft. What did they do to try to improve their team from last season when they made the playoffs? Well, let's take a look. First, let's look at their cap situation. How much money did they have to really work with? Well, they had $17 million at the beginning of the off season, and then today, or as of August, they have almost $9 million. So they did spend a little bit of that cap space. But before we look and see how they spent it, I want to go through some players that at the beginning of the offseason I thought were at risk of being cut in order to increase their cap space. First, Charcandrick West. I thought that was a guy, he would save $1.7 million if they cut him. He was in the final year of his contract. He had less than 100 yards rushing last season. But then the question is, if they did cut him, who would share the load with Kareem Hunt? It seems like the Chiefs didn't have an answer to that question, and so far they have not cut him yet. But that is a guy who could be on the chopping block depending on how he shows up and performs in the preseason. Tamba Hali is another guy that I thought was at risk of being cut for good reason. I mean, if you look at the numbers, he's 34 years old. He's a Chiefs legend. Let's be clear about that. Look how many sacks he has. I didn't total it up, but it looks like he's got 15, 18, 27, and then another 26. So it's 53, another 20, 73. And then another 13, maybe 8. So he's got 90 sacks over his career. That's solid. Forced fumbles, tackles for loss, just fills up the stat sheet all over the field. But look at the numbers drop. Okay. 2016, 34 tackles, 3.5 sacks, 0 forced fumbles, 1 tackle for a loss. And then finally, last season, 5 games, had injury, 1 tackle. He's done. He's probably done. $7.6 million he was expected to be paid. Final year of the deal was a no-brainer because of that knee injury. It's just probably done. It's sad. He was a Chiefs legend. Another guy that's a legend, future Hall of Famer, maybe first ballot future Hall of Famer, Darrelle Revis. All right? Revis Island, very famous, one of the best, probably the best corner of his generation. I don't even think it's probably. I think he's definitely the best. Saved $4.5 million, though, by cutting him. He only played in 5 games last year, and he didn't play well in those 5 games. He's old. He's done. He retired. He went ahead and retired. It was sad. But the guy's a legend. And like I said, should be a first ballot guy. But you never know. He doesn't have the same kind of personality problems that Terrell Owens carried with him. I love T.O., and I absolutely believe that he should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. And I think the reason that he wasn't a first ballot Hall of Famer is because he pulls crap like he did, this week where he didn't show up to the ceremony and had his own little ceremony. That's exactly why you weren't a first ballot Hall of Famer. But I still think he should have been. He earned it, but they didn't give it to him. So Darrelle Revis, I don't think he carries those same kind of issues, but we'll see. I think he'll be a first ballot guy. Ron Parker is a guy that I thought might get cut. At the beginning of the offseason, he was not, but then eventually they did cut him, and they saved $5 million by letting him go. And you can see there that he ended up signing a 1-year, $915,000 deal with the Falcons. So Ron Parker was cut, and that freed up about $5 million as well. So quite a lot of cap space they were able to open up. Now let's look at who were the free agents. Who were the guys that they were at risk of losing? Albert Wilson. That's a guy that they were at risk of losing, and they did, in fact, lose him. Had a good year in the final year. Well, it was his free agent tender year. He signed a restricted free agent contract last season and performed. Did what he needed to do. 550 yards, 3 touchdowns. Got a 3-year, $24 million deal with Miami after they lost Jarvis Landry. DeAnthony Thomas was another free agent wide receiver for the Chiefs. Has never had more than 156 yards receiving. Last year had 143 yards in 16 games. He's a former 4th rounder, finished his rookie contract. They gave him a 1-year, $880,000 deal to return. Zach Fulton is another guy from last year that contributed significantly. He was a backup center and potentially could have been a starting guard if they had brought him back. It was a big question mark for the Chiefs. What to do about Zach Fulton? They drafted him in the 6th round in 2014. He was finishing his rookie contract. Do you pay the man and start him at left guard, or do you let him go? Well, the Texans were pretty desperate for offensive line help. They gave him 4 years and $28 million. And so the Chiefs decided to let him walk and instead, bring back the guys that were the guards last season who, played all right. They're not, superstars, but they're not Pro Bowl caliber guards, but hopefully the Chiefs, they can get the job done. But Zach Fulton won't be back. And, he played at center. He filled in at center for, the injured starter last year. And so, he's a really important part of the offensive line. It's a big loss. It's a big loss for the Chiefs. At defensive line, on the defense, the free agents included Derek Johnson, another Chiefs legend. You can see his numbers. His sack numbers aren't the same as Holly because he was an inside linebacker, not an outside linebacker. But look at his tackle numbers. Bam! 100, 100, 100, 100. In 2014, he only played 1 game. Came back 100. But now you can see the numbers starting to drop. 90 tackles in 2016. 71 tackles last season. He's still got some. In fact, Oakland signed him to play there. I was surprised that Oakland let Navarro Bowman go, not sign him because Bowman played great. But they decided to bring in Derek Johnson, and they got him for 1 year, $1.5 million. He's 35 years old though, but he's still got some. So, but the Chiefs decided that they needed to go ahead and move on. And so it's a loss. It's definitely a loss for the Chiefs. But we'll talk about how they plan on replacing him. Benny Logan, another loss for the Chiefs, defensive tackle, didn't play as well as they had hoped in his 1 year there in Kansas City. But look, the guy, he is what he is, 52 tackles, 1.5 sacks, 9 tackles for a loss. He's a run stopper. That's what he does. He plays well against the run. Chiefs has signed him to an $8 million deal, hoping that maybe he could do a little bit more and provide perhaps some more pass rush even. But he left and signed a 1 year, $4 million deal to play with the Titans. So Benny Logan won't be back. That's definitely a loss too. Another defensive tackle that was a free agent is Jarvis Jenkins. And he was a decent backup, defensive tackle. He'll be 30 years old next season. He played on a 1-year deal worth $825,000, had 10 tackles and a sack in 11 games. He had a few decent seasons earlier when he was a younger cat there in the NFL, and so the Chiefs decided to bring him back for $880,000. Kevin Pierre-Louis, another guy who is a big contributor last year on the Chiefs defense, did not play badly. Was strong against the run. He was okay in man coverage. And he was finishing up his rookie contract, former 4th-round guy, had 41 tackles last year. So, very strong contributor to that defense. But he signed a 2-year, $6 million deal with the Jets to go play for them. Now, it is worth noting that he was arrested for possession of marijuana in the off-season. Listen, it doesn't, whatever you may think about marijuana, whatever I may think about marijuana, the NFL, for whatever reason, continues to punish these players for testing positive or even being arrested with marijuana. I don't know if they've announced any suspension yet for him, but, that's just something worth noting. He might have to miss a couple of games because of that. We'll see if the NFL can get into the 21st century. Listen, people don't have to agree about marijuana. If some people say, hey, it's bad or whatever, that's fine. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. But in several of these states, maybe not the state he was in, but in many states now, it's legal. Either for medical purposes, some states it's even legal for recreational purposes. So, for the NFL to continue to punish these guys for doing something that is legal, in several states, it's interesting. I think it seems backwards to me. But regardless of what I think, it doesn't matter because they punish for it and the players can't do it. Cornerback Kenneth Acker. He performed very poorly last season. Finished up his rookie contract, was a 6th-round pick. He will not be back with the Chiefs. Philip Gaines, another guy at corner, highly inconsistent. Sometimes had great plays, sometimes got burned. Was a 3rd-round pick in 2014. And Buffalo brought him in for 1 year and $835,000. Chiefs let him walk. Let's go ahead and summarize all of the major changes from last year's roster to this year's roster. The biggest one of all, Alex Smith out. Traded to the Redskins. Huge change for the Chiefs. Chad Henne is coming in. Matt McGloin is coming in. But, of course, those guys are not going to be the starter. Patrick Mahomes is going to be the starter. That's why they drafted him to come in and become the starter for the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't know. I've read several things about him this offseason and how he's performed. He certainly has a bigger arm than Alex Smith did. He's able to make throws that Alex Smith couldn't make. But he also appears to turn the ball over in ways that Alex Smith never did. So there will be a roller coaster ride in Kansas City at the quarterback position. And we'll see what Mahomes is able to do. Look, it's his first year. Maybe in the long run, if he can figure out how not to make stupid decisions, he might be the answer. He might be the guy who can be everything that the Chiefs wanted that Alex Smith couldn't be. But it could be a step back, in the first year. We'll see. Akeem Hunt 23 yards rushing in 2017. I don't know why it says in 2015 games, but, obviously that's a mistake. But Akeem Hunt was out. He didn't do very well. And whatever number of games he played, he only had 23 yards rushing. Damian Williams is in. Kerwin Williams is in. They're going to give these guys a chance to become maybe the number 3 back there. Maybe the number 2 back. I don't know. But, Damian and Kerwin Williams were both backups in there. Like, Damian Williams was in Miami. I think Kerwin Williams was in Arizona. But 181 yards, 3.9 yards per carry, 426 yards with 3.6 yards a carry. Those are guys that aren't going to, obviously they're not the starter, okay? Kareem Hunt is the starter, and you're just trying to find some depth there at running back. At wide receiver, Albert Wilson is out, but Sammy Watkins is in. That is huge. Huge. They also brought in Daniel Braverman, but that's just a guy who, sort of a reserve player. Look at Albert Wilson's numbers. 554 yards, career high. Look at Sammy Watkins' numbers. Okay, outside that year, he had that foot injury. Had, averaged 1,000 yards receiving his first 2 seasons. He still had 8 touchdowns last year with the Rams. And apparently, he looks great in the preseason or in the off season, the training camp and everything. All the word has been is that Sammy Watkins looks phenomenal. And with Andy Reid, you know how he's a little guru. He gets guys open. They're training Sammy Watkins at all the different wide receiver positions, moving him all over the field. That's exciting if you're a Chiefs fan. I think that is very, very exciting. Definitely an upgrade there. And to pair him, with the guys you already have at receiver, it's exciting. It should be an interesting offense to watch. But Mahomes, that's a big question mark. At tight end, Demetrius Harris, the number 2 tight end, is out. Had 224 yards receiving last season. Jason Morrow, Tim Wright, Alex Ellis in. Look, Amaro had a decent season like 4 years ago, but only had 59 yards the last 2 seasons. Wright had a big year 100 years ago, in 2013, but hadn't had no yards the last 2 seasons. Alex Ellis, 3 career receptions. Okay, they're not, now obviously, once again, these guys are not brought in to be your number 1 wide receiver. You already have a number 1 wide receiver. But I'm just saying, when you're comparing the roster, what did you have last year at the position? What do you have this year at the position? Probably you have less depth this year is what you got. At tackle, Dylan Gordon they brought in. He's been the practice squad guy his whole career. At guard, Zach Fulton, I mentioned that. He started in replace of Mitch Morse at center. Mitch Morse will be back. So they let Zach Fulton walk, but he was really important depth. And who did they bring in? They brought in Reggie McKenzie. You're really, the offensive line is something to keep an eye on if you're a Chiefs fan. Defense, Benny Logan out, had good numbers, strong against the run. Roy Miller, Cam Thomas, reserve players, they'll be out as well. They brought in Xavier Williams. They drafted Derek Nottie, and also they brought in T.Y. McGill and Stephon Charles. Xavier Williams was decent. I believe he played with the Cardinals, if I'm not mistaken. Had 20 tackles and served as a rotational lineman. Not Benny Logan. Okay, not Benny Logan caliber, but he's all right. He's a decent addition. It'll be interesting to see what Derek Nottie is able to bring. I'm actually an FSU alumni, Florida State. He's a big player there. He's young. He's a guy who has a ton of potential. I don't know how much he'll be able to provide in his first season. It could be a big jump for him to the NFL, but I'm hopeful that he'll over time be a key contributor there in Kansas City. T.Y. McGill had 18 tackles and 5 sacks in 5 seasons. And Stephon Charles didn't even play last year, is a rotational lineman. So, in the short run, I think probably took a step back at defensive tackle. At linebacker, Derek Johnson, gone. Kevin Pierre-Louis, gone. Tom Holly, gone. Ramik Wilson, gone. So that's some pretty big losses there at linebacker. I mean, with Holly, he didn't provide much last season because of he saw very limited time. He had the knee injury. Derek Johnson is on the decline at his age. Kevin Pierre-Louis, I think, is a pretty big loss. I mean, he was a solid backup guy. So what did they do to replace it? Well, they brought in Anthony Hitchens from the Dallas. That's good. It's a step to replacing Derek Johnson on the inside. They drafted Dorian O'Daniel to also, in the 3rd round, to also help out on the inside. And then they drafted Breeland Speaks to be an outside guy. If you run a 3-4, you got to have linebackers, that's for sure. There's Derek Johnson's numbers again. Just great career with the Chiefs legend. There's Anthony Hitchens' numbers. So the last couple of years, look at Derek Johnson, 90 tackles, 71, and 71 last season, 7 tackles for a loss. Hitchens had 84 tackles last season in 12 games, 10 tackles for a loss. That's huge. Did not do a lot in coverage. I would say this. Anthony Hitchens will have a better season next year, I would presume, than Derek Johnson will with the Raiders. He's younger. He's a lot younger. So in that way, it's an upgrade. But I don't know if Anthony Hitchens will ever be Derek Johnson in his prime. Tamba Hali, you can see, huge career, and he'll be gone. Sad. Kevin Pierre-Louis finished his rookie contract, strong against the run. We talked about all this. And there's Ramik Wilson. Now, Ramik Wilson had a pretty good 2016. Chiefs had some injured players. He had 76 tackles. But last year he only played in 8 games and had 16 tackles. So he was back to a reserve role last season. But he'll be gone. So that'll be some depth that will be gone. At corner, Marcus Peters, that's pretty big. He was obviously causing locker room problems. He's kind of a belligerent dude. But he was also a belligerent number 1 starting caliber corner, shutdown corner. So that's a pretty big loss. They traded him to the Rams. Terrence Mitchell, another starting corner, is gone. Phillips Gaines, the number 4 corner, gone. Kenneth Acker, reserve corner, gone. Darrell Reeve is gone. So a lot of turnover there in the secondary for the Chiefs. Kendall Fuller came over in that trade with Alex Smith. That's very helpful. He's a quality starting nickel, might even be able to play on the outside. They brought in David Amerson, who was a backup, I believe, with the Raiders, but didn't play that well. Also brought in McKinton Dorleant, but he only has 1 career tackle. And then Tremon Smith, they drafted in the 6th round. This is where things really, The Chiefs' offense is going to be extremely good. You got some superstars there. It'll depend a lot on Patrick Mahomes and to some extent also on the offensive line. But, there's every reason to believe that the Chiefs' offense is just going to tear it up. But it's also very possible that your defense is going to get tore up every game. It's going to be like a race playing the Chiefs, every week. First one to 100 wins. I don't know. Defense is going to be an issue. At safety, Ron Parker, who started last season with Eric Berry out, he is gone. And Steven Terrell is gone. Eric Berry will be back. That's huge. One of the best safeties in the league. And they also brought in Robert Golden, who is a backup safety, and also drafted Armani Watts in the 4th round. Overall, it's very, very hard to say that your defense has improved. Very, very hard, okay? I think in the short term, at the minimum, you took a step back at defensive tackle, in my opinion. Linebacker, you got a couple of rookies. What can they bring to the table? In the long run, maybe it's a step up. In the short run, probably not. At corner, Kendall Fuller is a good addition, but is he as good as Marcus Peters? I don't know. I don't think you improved at corner. It's big to have Eric Berry back. That's the bottom line is this. Chiefs have some weapons on offense. If the key guys stay healthy, they should be able to put up a lot of points. But how many points are they going to need? Because the defense has got some problems. It's hard to really know if you'll be able to win the division again this season. Certainly you got a good chance at it. But the Chargers will be good this season. The Raiders should be better. I don't know if the Raiders would be good enough to win the division, but certainly they'll be better. And the Broncos. The Broncos, though, could really give you a lot of trouble. The Broncos defense, in fact, I would really be worried about the Broncos if I was a Chiefs fan, because when they're going to have Von Miller and then that Chubb guy both blitzing and on the Broncos defense is going to be really, really good. Patrick Mahomes is going to be playing for the first time. And, with Case Keenum coming in for Denver, that could help turn their offense around pretty quick. So, Denver is a team to keep an eye on. Denver and the Chargers could really, but it's just tough to say. Chiefs offense looks phenomenal, but your defense is so bad, I predict that you might not be able to make the playoffs. So we'll see. I hope that I'm, wrong. I like the Chiefs. Look, I like the Chiefs more than I like the Broncos for sure, and definitely more than the Chargers, the Raiders. But it's just, wow, that defense. How will Mahomes do against that Denver Bronco defense? And how will anybody do against that defense? And how well can Case Keenum turn around that offense? So, Chiefs look great on offense. We'll see if they can win their division or get back to the playoffs this year. But it won't be easy with the defense. If you like this video, please click subscribe, because we are going to have some of the best coverage of the NFL on YouTube. At the end of the preseason, we're going to break down the final rosters of all 32 teams. And then we are going to every week preview the upcoming week's games and review the previous week's games in the middle of the week. So make sure to click that subscribe button, because we are going to provide you with some of the best coverage of the NFL. Thank you.